Today we're going to talk about our third and final type of noun clauses, which are noun clauses that begin with if or whether. So when you're trying to decide in these, you can use either if or whether, but it's an either or situation, so you can't use both in a noun clause. If or whether are typically used in indirect questions, and we'll take a look at that in a little bit. But keep in mind that they also, just like all the other noun clauses that we've looked at so far, use the normal word order. So they, after if or whether, we're going to use subject and then verb. Okay, so let's take a look at an example. The beginning of a statement could be something like this. She asked me, right? And then it could be followed by a noun clause. If we use if or whether, the question that she asked should be a yes or no question. So she asked me if I could speak Urdu. So probably her question was, can you speak Urdu, right? And the answer could be yes, I can, or no, I can't. So by using if in the noun clause, we know it was a yes or no question. We could also say she asked me whether I spoke Spanish at home. Can you think of the question, the direct question she might have asked? It could be, do you speak Spanish at home? Yes or no, right? So again, using if or whether in the noun clause means that the original question had to be a yes or no question. If it's not a yes or no question, we would use a WH question word, like she asked me who speaks Spanish, right? So we would use the word who because it's not a yes or no question. Okay, here are two examples for you. I'd like you to finish the sentences. The word in bold is the beginning of your noun clause, and it's going to be followed by a subject and a verb. So please pause the video as you think about it. I'm going to give you some answers in just a second. So one answer could be, for number one, my classmate called me last night. He wanted to know if I took notes during class, because he missed class. So if I took, subject and verb. Number two, the professor didn't say whether. The professor didn't say whether we would have a quiz or not on Friday. So again, we is the subject, would have are the verbs there. So those are just a couple of quick examples. Let's look at a bit more practice with if and whether. So we said that many times we'll use an if and whether in a noun clause for an indirect question. So in these, we're going to take a direct question and turn it into an indirect question by adding a noun clause. So for example, direct question is, do you plan to transfer to a four-year college? Notice that the answer to this question could be yes or no, so therefore we can use if or whether. We can begin a sentence of an indirect question by saying, I'd like to know. Here we're not asking directly, we're telling the person we would like to know the answer. So we could say, I'd like to know if you plan to transfer to a four-year college or not. Notice that when we use if, we could add or not at the end of the sentence if we wanted to. If we don't want to add that, that's okay. We can just say if and then finish the sentence here. But if you'd like to add or not, just to emphasize, you can add it at the end. Here I have questions 2 and 3. Here are the direct questions, and I'd like you to make it an indirect question by starting with these phrases and then adding a noun clause here. I'll let you pause the video while you think about it, and I'll give you some example answers in a moment. Okay, example answers, here we go. I wonder if she speaks more than 2 languages. Notice that here I used if. You could also use whether, right? If you did that, that's fine. But here I chose not to add or not at the end. Or not is really just an emphasis. If it sounds right or wrong to you, that's fine. Oops, one thing I forgot to talk about. Notice here we have the auxiliary verb does, and the subject is she. So in order to have subject-verb agreement, we know we're going to get rid of the auxiliary verb or the helper verb, But then the subject and the verb need to agree, so I've added an S here. It would not be correct to say if she speak, because she needs to have a third person singular verb. Okay, question number 3. Here are some example answers. I used whether for this one. You could also use if. But if you use whether, I just want to show you that if we want to add or not for emphasis, I have 2 choices with whether. Either I could put it directly after whether, or I could put it at the very end of the sentence. Okay. Here, the direct question is, have you written an essay before? And then it says, my teachers always ask me, right? So because it's saying that my teachers ask me, and this question is for me, I changed to I, right? Not you, but I. Whether or not I have written an essay before. Whether I have written an essay before or not. So again, there's no real difference between if and whether. You can use them interchangeably, but if you choose to use or not, make sure that if it's going to be at the end of the sentence, and with whether, you can put it either right after whether or at the end, okay? Also remember that if we're going to use if or whether, it has to be a yes or no question, right? Otherwise, we're going to use a WH question word. And the last thing to remember is that we need to use normal word order, subject plus verb, and end it with a period, not a question mark, which is a common mistake that students make. Okay, so I hope that helped. Again, please feel free to watch these videos again and again. It takes some time for this information to sink in, and do lots and lots of practice. That's the best way that you can improve.